G'day everybody, my name's James.
And I'm Hugh Jeffries.
And in this video we're going to be working on the Rover episode 2.
In last episode, we got the engine running, gave it a clean and put some new tyres on it.
So in this episode we're going to be doing the fueling system, we're going to be working a little bit on the braking system, and then we're going to change some fluids. So let's get right into it. So to start this video, if you remember from the last episode, we weren't getting any petrol from the fuel tank. And we're thinking that might be a fuel pump, but today we're going to inspect the fuel system. And it's all going to start with the inertia switch.
This is an inertia switch, and its main job is to cut power to the fuel system in case of a crash. So we started by trying to troubleshoot this by bypassing the switch to see if we can get the car to start. But it didn't. So our next step was to take a look at that fuel pump. So pushing down the back seats and removing the grotty carpets, we can take off the rubber lid and have access to the fuel pump. Spraying the screws with WD-40 to assist us in removing them with the screwdriver, we can then carefully remove the entire fuel pump assembly. With the pump removed, we can see if we're getting power to the pump. We tested this by attaching a multimeter to the connections. We were receiving power to the fuel pump, which means the unit itself is a bit buggered. Undoing both bolts and the hose, we can pop out the old fuel pump. Installing the fuel pump is exactly opposite to removing the old one, so we tightened up the bolts and attached the hose. All that was left to do was attach the fuel filter bag, but it wouldn't go on to the pump no matter how hard we pushed on it. It was just too small. We even made a call to the company that makes the pump to ask them if there was something we were missing, but all he said was,
"Alright, let me inquire, I'll give you a call back."
No worries mate, see you soon.
Okay, see you soon.
Fucking useless.
So with the call being absolutely no help, we got a bit creative and forced it on and then installed a zip tie around it. Then it was time to install it. So what's the problem we're running into, James?
The bag is so much bigger than the actual hole that we have.
And because it's only held in by what, a zip tie?
Yeah, half a zip tie.
Because it's poorly engineered. It is on.
It's definitely on because they did shake it at the shop, but
Shout out to for
fucking
selling us this. Because it's not very good.
Yeah. I guess we're just going to have to go for it.
Alright, should you lift it? Do what final test? Lift the bag and hopefully it supports the whole weight of the sending unit? Or is that too much pressure, you reckon?
Give me a light pull now, it doesn't seem like it wants to come off.
Alright, let's give it a light push. Pushing it into the fuel tank, we lightly squashed it into place, lowering it in. We could see that the bag was still attached, so we fastened down the screws and connected everything back up for a test run. And the engine is running off its own fuel tank, which is a huge step forward in this restoration, but unfortunately it sounds like a leaking oxygen tank. So I guess we'll now need to sort that out.
Okay, so now the fueling system is done, the engine is running off its own petrol tank, although it does sound like a leaking oxygen tank.
Either way though, it's time to move on to the brakes.
And brakes are sort of important because we would like to stop. Anyway, so let's go start at the rear tyres. The braking system on the Rover is 2 disc brakes at the front and 2 drum brakes at the back. So we're going to start off at the back wheels, so let's crack all 5 lug nuts on the back, jack up the car. We had to use a scissor jack because there's no support piece for a floor jack. Then we can insert the axle stands and then remove the wheel. And it looks like someone has attempted this before because the bolt to take the cover off is completely stripped. So with a bit of help from Dad, we broke out the highly advanced tools and removed the stuck bolt by bashing an old screwdriver into the bolt. Now removing the cover, you can see while we're not able to stop, there's barely anything there. So without wasting any time, I took apart the old drum brakes. I started off by removing the drum spring and cup, then got a small screwdriver to pop off the red spring. A pair of pliers helped to remove the second spring, and then we can remove the top shoe. And you'll see that this top shoe has the self-adjuster on it, so make sure you keep that safe because we need that later. Then removing the second spring and cup and the third spring, which is attached to the cross lever, then you can remove the bottom shoe, which I did off camera. Next is to remove the wheel cylinder, and we did this by removing the circlip at the back and undoing the brake line so that comes out. And if you want to see how I store these drum parts, I have another video showing how I did that, which will be in the description and at the end of the video. Now we have to move the self-adjuster to the new shoe, and you can see in this frame how much brake pad we do not have left on the old one. So first we have to remove the E-clips located here. Then we can pop out those plugs holding them in. I gave them a quick whack with the hammer and an Allen key just to quickly pop them out. Then I gave them a quick clean up with a wire brush, and then you just insert them onto the screw the same way that you found them. And finally install some new E-clips. Installing the drum components is the worst job anyone could ever have, and I never want to do it again. But we start off with the wheel cylinder, and that gets held into place with a circlip and it has to be bashed in with a hammer, but it's not an easy task because it is a concave shape, which makes it very difficult to do. So we had to use a little bit of wedge to bash it in. As you can see, the hammer is hitting that wedge and we just managed to get it in. If you manage to get that on, the next part is to put the bottom shoe on the cross lever as shown here. The next trick is to put the cross lever spring back on, and then you need to do your best to attach the red spring and the black spring into their holes on the top as bottom as shown here. Then you can put the shoes into their holders, which will put tension in the springs. Then you can install the spring and cup onto the steady pin, which will hold the shoes in place as shown here. Finally, we can install the shoe cover and make sure not to squish your fingers. Ow! Then you can bleed the system, put the wheel back on, torque down the bolts, and you're all good to go. Now it's time to work on the front brakes, and it's the same deal as before. Crack all 5 lug nuts with a breaker bar while on the ground. Do a little bit of gardening to get your jack in under your car. Put the jack in, jack it all up, a little bit more gardening, then you can put your jack stand in. Remove all 5 lug nuts completely and then take off your tyre. We had to get a little bit of wood behind ours to knock it off because it's stuck to the hub. A top tip is to turn your wheel to the side, then you have better access to your bolts. However, if you're just checking the brake pads, then you don't actually have to remove the caliper, just 2 split pins as shown here. But I took off the caliper because I wanted to give it a good clean and a touch of paint. And again, if you want to see that video, it's going to be in the same video as the drum parts, so make sure you click on the link in the description after this video to go watch that. But if you are taking off the caliper like me, it's just 2 bolts at the back, then a brake line, and you're all done. I just gave my rotor a quick clean with a wire brush and some water, and then put my newly painted caliper on. My brake pads still had a lot of material left on, so I didn't worry about changing them. And then you're all done, and it's so much simpler than drum brakes. So I'm going to cut an incredibly long story short. As we went to bleed the brakes, we realised there was little to no brake fluid coming out, so we hadn't inspected the master cylinder. At first glance it seemed alright. Even when we took it off the car to look further, it seemed perfectly fine, but I thought it just may have been a leaky seal, so I ordered a new seal kit and installed it. But however, it still didn't work, so I inspected further and found the pressure differential piston was completely seized. So with a little help from Dad, we tried hitting it, we tried heating it, but nothing was working. So we tipped vinegar down the hole and heated that up, and after a little bit of wriggling around, we managed to get the piston out, put new seals on, and put it all back together. Even then, it still didn't work, so I travelled to a nearby city and got a brake specialist to have a look at it. After he had a look, he said that there were parts missing and the seals were on backwards. Now I'm new to brake work and I just installed the seals the way I found them. As for parts missing, I made sure I put everything back into the cylinder, which means that someone else had been messing with it before I got the car. The brake specialist said he can send it away and get everything repaired on it, but it'd just be much easier and cheaper to find a new master cylinder. So that's what I'm going to be doing right now, and in the next episode we will find and install a new master cylinder, and hopefully we'll be able to drive it. Now let's go do something we should have done in the last episode. Okay, so it was pretty clear in the comments of the last episode that a lot of you were having a cry or spitting the dummy or cracking the shit over the fact that we didn't change the oil in the last episode. Now we checked that off camera and we knew there was oil in it. We knew it wasn't the greatest oil because it's been sitting for about 10 years. But it was enough to get to the garage where we do the tyre change and then back here where we can park it. So stop your crying, we're going to do it right now.
So an oil change is super easy to do. You firstly jack up the car and place a jack stand under it. Grab a breaker bar and crack open the sump drain plug, and then slide an oil tray underneath and slowly undo the plug until the oil rushes out. Now, let the old oil drain out completely before putting the old plug back in. Give it a quick tighten up, and it only needs to be tightened about half a turn past finger tight.
The filter is next up, and give it a quick clean off with a rag, then grab your filter removal tool and loosen it. This filter is in a good spot, so I can just reach down from the top of the engine and undo it the rest of the way. It will have some oil in it, so make sure you have an oil tray underneath, and now remove your oil tray and filter just to put them aside for now.
With the new filters, it's always recommended to smear a bit of oil around the seal before installing it, and also to fill it up about 1/3 of the way so the engine doesn't have to fill up this filter before it gets to the main block.
Installing is super simple. Line it up on the thread, then wind it back a bit to make sure it doesn't cross thread. Then just thread it all the way up, and the filter only needs to be done up about as tight as you can do it by hand.
Next up is to wipe down the oil cap and remove it. And then all you need to do is grab a funnel and tip your oil right in. This Rover engine takes 5.1 litres of oil. Once that's in, you can lower the car, put it on a level surface, which we'll be doing later on, and check the oil level on the dipstick.
Now all that old oil can go into an oil bottle you just emptied and can be taken to a recycling place. Since we have new oil in the engine, we can give it a bit of a run and make sure everything is okay. The engine runs, but it does sound like it's starting with petrol. I'm thinking this could be a blocked fuel pipe or the carburetors are blocked. That sounds like a job for the next episode. So that's it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.
We're going to be doing the gas struts, wiring, and giving the inside a good steam clean.
Hopefully that will get rid of all the smell. And thank you to Hugh for helping out with this video.
No worries.
He is his Instagram down here, and also he has a YouTube one down there. You don't need mine because you're watching it. And go give him a follow. He's a top bloke. Alright, I'm going to stop you right there. Hi, I'm James from the future, and I'm here to tell you if you follow us on Instagram, you're going to get regular updates of working on the Rover and any other projects that I take on. And if you use the hashtag 1981 Rover build, you're going to see all the posts that I have up at the moment. So chuck us a follow and turn on those notifications because you don't want to miss a thing. Subscribe for episode 3 and back to past Hugh and James. So we look forward to seeing you in episode 3.
Catch us later.
What a terrific way to end the day. Nice blown tyre.